looking, throwing in the end zone.
Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
Young to the air, Young to Jerry Rice, touchdown San Francisco.
Young stumbles on the way back and fires up the middle. Pass is caught by Owens.
Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm your host, Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis, plus timely and entertaining sports and pop culture topics. And today we're going to be going over the 49ers' first preseason game at Tennessee, game notes and thoughts, who helped themselves, who potentially hurt themselves. Everyone out there in Twitter and social media land, slow your roll. It's just one game. We're going to be talking about some ridiculous proclamations people were making during and after the game. We're going to discuss the latest in some recent Aiyuk trade compensation nonsense. Why is Trent Williams, who's also holding out, getting a pass? So we're going to be talking about some transactions that happened earlier in the week. In the plus section, it's going to be Star Wars all the time. At the D23 conference, Disney gave some updates on Star Wars movies and shows. The Manalorian, and Grogu teaser trailer was released. The Skeleton Crew Disney Plus show teaser was released. And Andor Season 2, they showed some footage and actor interviews. But like always, it starts with the Niners, so let's get right into it.
Let's talk Niners!
So the Niners fall at Tennessee in the first preseason game for either team 17-13. There's going to be a lot of things that folks are going to try to take away from this game, good, bad, or indifferent, and make a lot of ridiculous proclamations, which we are going to get into. But I'm just going to go over some game notes and thoughts, a lot of things that we all saw that I'm sure you guys are going to agree with or have some differing thoughts on, which is totally cool. But just wanted to let everyone know that a couple players did not travel to the game. McCaffrey, Warner, Bosa, Ricky Pearsall, who is still nursing a shoulder injury, and of course, Brandon Aiyuk and Trent Williams. Now, starting off, Niners starting on offense and having a really crisp opening drive. Some things that jumped out: Braden Willis, tight end, started as the fullback, or at least in the fullback position, came in motion. Eric Saubert was the inline tight end to start the game and throughout most of the first half. Jordan Mason at running back had a really nice drive, 6 rushes for 34 yards and a touchdown. Made a nice case this game to supplant running back Eli Mitchell as the number 2 back behind Christian McCaffrey, but this is extremely early still in camp and the preseason. The starting wide receivers that lined up were Chris Conley and Ronnie Bell. As I mentioned, Pearsall did not play or travel due to the shoulder injury. No Aiyuk. Debo was there and didn't play. Jennings was there and didn't play. So you essentially had your top 4 receivers on the depth chart either not there or not playing. And that was also a truism for a lot of other positions that we're going to get to. So Chris Conley, the veteran, Ronnie Bell, the second-year player, played, and Chris Conley had a couple, nice catches. You can tell that the savviness of a veteran, the route running, the getting open, finding holes in the zone, and consequently Brandon Allen finding him. And Ronnie Bell had a couple receptions, had some drops as well. And I think he has an uphill battle to make the team, given that Trent Taylor, as long as he is a sure-handed punt returner, he may not be breaking off, 30-yard returns every game, that he would be wide receiver 6. But Conley and Bell started the game. Offensive line did have some starters. Now, Chris Hubbard started at left tackle for Trent Williams, but that's only because backup left tackle Jalen Moore was under the weather. Right guard Aaron Banks starting right guard. Nick Zakiel was starting at center for Jake Brendel. Dominic Puny starting at guard for Spencer Burford and John Feliciano, who was nursing some injuries, and starting right guard Colton McKivitz got the nod at his position. So 60% of the line was new. Nobody should read into the Chris Hubbard getting the nod, again, because Jalen Moore was injured. Jalen Moore has improved in each of his third seasons. This will be his fourth season. I think what's nice about this starting lineup was Chris Hubbard getting the start at left tackle, where he's projected to be the backup at right tackle behind Colton McKivitz. So flexibility, not going to hurt his chances at all. And Nick Sakiel, they've been pushing for backup center duty, or maybe in the future starting center duty, since he came into the league from Fordham, who is a tackle. Niners thought he could be a guard. They want him to play, I guess, all three interior positions. No fumbled snaps, no awkward exchanges. Acquitted himself well, again, at least for the first game. Now, special teams coverage was in midseason form. It was bad. The first half, the first kick return for the Titans of the game went back 63 yards. The first punt return went back 26 yards. Things improved in the second half, but the 49ers were not in, well, they were in midseason form regarding special teams. And on that kickoff return that went 63 yards, another 15 yards were added on because Kyle Shanahan and his special teams coach were unaware of what was going on and blocking the view of an official. So they got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty added on to the end of that run. The Niners defense, though, did stand up strong, should have gotten off the field on a third down, but Ambry Thomas, who started at cornerback opposite Rock Yassin, was called for a holding penalty on 3rd and goal, and the Titans punched it in a few plays after that. The Titans started out, I think, inside the 20. So for the Niners to potentially have just given up a field goal, I mean, who knows? Tennessee might have gone for it anyway on 4th down. They were going for it quite a bit. And why not? It's preseason, game number 1, or just the preseason in general. But Ambry Thomas did not have a good game, and there's going to be more on him later. One player I do not want to overlook, let's hop back to the offensive line, rookie 3rd-round pick, Dominic Puny, who has been in a battle, if you want to call it that, for the starting right guard spot, only because Burford broke his hand and Feliciano's been nursing some injuries, had a good showing. This was a good first step. You can only take away so much from practices when you are generally practicing against the same players every day, when defensive looks are somewhat vanilla. And you saw it. The Titans blitzed on the first play of the game and gave the Niners O-line some difficulty as the blitz got right to Brandon Allen, who had to get rid of the ball. But Puny acquitted himself well. More on him in a minute. Fellow rookie Malik Mustafa had some good, had some bad, the bad being slipping, taking some poor angles on coverages and in pursuit of ball carriers, but did come up with a big hit and stop on 4th and 1 from the San Francisco 3. Clearly made the stop before the player got past the line to gain. Refs gave them the first down, so the refs aren't really in midseason form yet either. Kyle Shanahan challenged the play, and the Niners got the ball with a turnover on downs. Another rookie, Renardo Green, played some outside, played some slot, did get a fumble recovery when the 49ers were batting the ball around on the ground for entirely too long. No one can just fall on it, and you see far too often when this happens, 2 players from the same team battling for the ball, and it squirts out, and that was definitely what happened to 2 Niner defensive linemen. But Renardo Green had the wherewithal to just fall on it, not try to pick it up and run with it, which is really the death knell for a lot of would-be turnovers because the ball always seems like it's coated in butter. Offensively, Clint Kubiak was calling the plays, and there seemed to be, and this was not, I guess, on Clint Kubiak, but still issues with protection in terms of if and when the Titans rushed more than 4. As I mentioned, first play of the game, guess the Niners weren't really ready for it and ready to pass off. The blitz came right up the middle and got to Josh Allen. And there were other times too where having, more than 5 people on the line gave the 49ers line some difficulty in terms of keeping the pocket clean. Otherwise, I thought the line, when they were matched up, usually with just a 4-man rush, and occasionally being able to block man for man or zone block with a straight up 5-man rush, did okay. But there were either miscommunications or challenges, and it's totally okay. It was August 10th, the game was played, preseason game number 1. But I think for a lot of us, the Super Bowl and those missed blitz pickups at the end of the fourth quarter and in overtime are still sticking out in all of our heads. Nor, should we expect that every time a blitz comes at Purdy or Dobbs or Allen or Mordecai, that it's going to be picked up. That's just not realistic. I think the last we saw of San Francisco in February and the first taste we saw last night in live action felt the same, but I'm sure that will get worked on and improved as the line solidifies into and stays healthy, hopefully, the 5 that they're going to start the season with. Now, receiver-wise, I mentioned there was no Debo, no Jennings, no Pearsall, no Cowing. I'm going to go through some stats. Let's start with the receivers. Tay Martin, undrafted second-year player out of Oklahoma State, led the way, 5 for 58 yards. Trent Taylor, 3 for 48. Frank Darby had a nice catch for 33 yards deep in San Francisco's own end. Chris Conley, 2 for 30. Jake Tongs, fighting for a backup tight end spot, 3 for 27. Ronnie Bell, 2 for 22. Cam Latu, 2 for 12, both in the fourth quarter. And tight end Eric Saubert, 1 for 6. That occurred in the first quarter. The quarterbacks, they just broke it up between Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs. Allen played the whole first half, Dobbs the whole second half. Allen went 7 of 13 for 98 yards. Dobbs 14 of 20 for 146. And a pick, which was a Hail Mary at the end. And Dobbs also did have a nice scramble for a touchdown where he hurdled over a player to get into the end zone to pull within 17-13. The Niners went for 2 because they didn't want to be in a situation where if they were down 3 and got the ball back, a field goal would have went to overtime. So they were just playing for a win or a loss in some manner so that scoring either by the Niners or Titans, mathematically wouldn't have caused a tie, which is smart. Running the ball, Jordan Mason ran well. Bit of an issue for a running team when a receiver, Trent Taylor, was your second leading rusher. Granted, it was on an end around, but he went 1 for 21. Otherwise, then it was Josh Dobbs, 1 for 6 yards and a touchdown. Undrafted rookie Cody Schrader out of Missouri, 5 rushes for 6 yards. He did show some good speed on some runs, one specifically a sweep to the right that called back on a hold. Matt Breida's return, inglorious, 6 rushes for no yards. And as a team, 19 for 62 and 2 touchdowns. That's a little over 3 yards a carry. So offensively, a good, crisp first drive engineered by Brandon Allen, mixing the run and the pass. Jordan with a big run for a first down on that first set of downs. A completion to Chris Conley to move the chains. Brandon Allen looked sharp and decisive in the pocket. Finished 7 of 13, had a better first quarter than second quarter. I'm going to get back to Brandon Allen more in a bit before we talk defense. So on defense, overall, you're not going to see anything exotic generally in a preseason game. But what I will say is, in comparison to the Titans, the Niners defense played soft. And being the first game that Nick Sorenstam calls as defensive coordinator, you can't use that as an excuse because the Titans D coordinator was calling defensive plays for the first time himself. He seemed much more aggressive than Nick did in terms of dialing up plays. The coverages were soft and the flats were open a lot, to the point where watching it, I can't say I was watching it on TV. I was watching it on my laptop since I signed up for NFL Plus. I'm not in the San Francisco or Tennessee area, living in the Northeast. So signed up for NFL Plus for a month, essentially just to watch this one game, but well worth it. I enjoyed myself for, the 3 hours. I was calling out where the passes were going when I saw that the flats were open. And it was essentially the Niners playing a 4-3 with their corners back. And the three linebackers were essentially aligned behind the D line. And when that was the case, there was no one to cover the left and right flat. 3 times I called it, 3 times it happened. The Niners weren't challenging the Titans receivers and the Titans offensive line with blitzes or different looks as much as the Titans were doing to San Francisco. Preseason game 1, first time Nick's calling plays. Again, it was still the first time for the Titans D coordinator to call plays, and I'm sure they're going to get more comfortable with things as the practices and preseason rolls on. I know, yes, there were essentially no starters playing, but the same can be said for Tennessee. You can still work on dialing some stuff up, seeing how different blitzes potentially get home, if for nothing else than to examine the tape afterward. It just wasn't there as much from the Niners as it was from Tennessee. Now, I mentioned that Ambry Thomas started and Rock Ya-Sin started opposite him. On a handful of plays, Rock Ya-Sin looked good in coverage, guarding a fade to the left-hand corner of the end zone really well, being somewhat sticky in coverage. There was, the top 4 corners, if you want to call them that. Charvarius Ward, Yamador Lenore, Isaac Yadam, and Darrell Luter all did not play. So you had Rock Ya-Sin, you had Ambry Thomas and Samuel Womack and Renardo Green out there getting some extended run, and a bunch of safeties out there. 6 safeties played, maybe 5 safeties and a hybrid safety cornerback. So Jair Brown started with George Odom. Malik Mustafa played. Obviously had some splash-worthy plays and some things to work on. Tyler Hawkins. Tracy Walker, who was recently picked up from the Lions. And undrafted rookie free agent Jalen Mahoney played as well. So a lot of experience, or at least let's just say snaps, gained by some young secondary players and new arrivals like a Tracy Walker. And I think for George Odom, this is good as well. Should Talanoa Hufanga not be on track to start in week 1, and the indications are that he is, or the Niners are hoping that he can, getting real playing time, albeit in the preseason, but again, not going up against your same offense every day in practice, getting some different looks offensively, I think was good and important. Now, the run defense, not good. 38 rushes for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. When you break it down, it's only 3.6 yards per rush, but the Titans seemed to get whatever they wanted on the ground, especially when they needed it. 2-1, they outrushed San Francisco. And, an assortment of Tennessee backs. It was Pollard and Tajay Spears that led the way in the first quarter, and then they gave way to their 3rd, 4th, and 5th running backs, and everybody seemed to find some daylight against the run defense, which, yes, I understand were backups, but it was also backups of, the Titans' offensive line and offensive skill players. So maybe you want to see a bit more, I don't want to say effort, but productivity, overall from the run defense, since, again, that was a sore spot the latter half of the season and certainly in the playoffs for San Francisco. Let's go over some quick tackle stats. Rookie 7th round pick Tatum Bethune out of Florida State led the way with 8 total tackles, 5 solo and 1 tackle for loss. Good showing by Bethune. Curtis Robinson, fellow linebacker, had 7 total tackles, 4 solo. D. Winters was flying around early in the game. 5 total, 2 solo, and 1 tackle for loss. And Jalen Graham, 4 for 3. So obviously Warner didn't play. Greenlaw is hurt. Flanagan Fowles might have gotten on the field, but didn't potentially record a stat. So these 4 linebackers, generally acquitted themselves pretty well. And, Tatum Bethune getting those 8 tackles, a lot of it could be, attributed to, one, how much the Titans were running, 38 carries, and 2, the amount of playing time that he got in the second half when they were pulling, a D. Winters and a Curtis Robinson to a certain extent. Now, 2 injuries. D. Winters got hurt, but fortunately popped back up quickly and was able to return to the game. But cornerback Ambry Thomas left the game with an arm injury, did not return. It is a fractured arm. He is out for multiple weeks. Now, those of you that listen to the podcast know that I'm no fan of Ambry Thomas. That doesn't mean I want a player injured. It sucks if it's an injury that, he's going to need surgery for. Maybe not. Too early to tell. If it's going to keep him out for multiple weeks. And this is his livelihood, right? He's not going to be able to compete for a spot. Whereas I didn't think he would make a spot. I thought I thought and still think they have more talented cornerbacks on the roster, and they are deep. He doesn't get the opportunity to put more on film for other teams when he's healthy, considering how his first 3 years in the league have been very inconsistent. The question now with Ambry Thomas is, are they going to put him on IR, or are they going to release him with an injury settlement? Not to be cold, but I would say you don't really do anything until final cuts, where you release him and you save, I believe the number is $1.2 million on the cap with a release. Someone like Aiyuk Yasin, I believe, is going to make the team. Let's just for conversation's sake, because in the deal that he signed, it was a little over $1.1 million, and a little over $1 million was guaranteed. The Niners generally save next to nothing should they release him. This winds up being, in a bad way for Ambry Thomas, a perfect storm of reasons to, cut bait with a player that has been benched multiple times during his tenure because of his inconsistency. And that's why the Niners brought in an Isaac Yiadom, brought in Aiyuk Yasin, drafted Renardo Green. Want to see what they have in second-year player Darrell Luter, along with Ward and Lenoir, who are going to start in whatever capacity. Ward definitely on the outside, Lenoir outside or possibly inside. So, those are, some of the bigger takeaways in terms of the game. But when you go online, of course, you see hyperbole, wild overreaction after a play, after a drive, after a quarter. And since I reintroduced Twitter Twats last podcast, let's do it again, and we'll call this Twitter Twats, the hyperbole edition. Multiple people, I don't have the exact quotes. I was just reading through late last night, but I created my official notes for the podcast this morning. Multiple people defiantly or confidently proclaiming Brandon Allen is QB2 after his first drive, which was good, and then finished 7 of 13, a shade over 50%. Josh Dobbs, 14 of 20 for 146. Again, the interception was a Hail Mary, but had a significantly better completion percentage than Brandon Allen. And both quarterbacks led a touchdown drive. Allen did not get it, obviously, in the air, but Dobbs did get it on the ground using his legs. D. Winters should be starting. And listen, this may come to pass, and I don't want to be the Debbie Downer or the one that pours or throws a wet blanket on anybody's enthusiasm. But guys, this happens every year. Every year in training camp. And if folks are rooting for the underdog, the undrafted rookie free agent, that's great. Movies like Rudy, they really capture everybody's imagination and hearts by rooting for a player that, by all accounts really shouldn't make a team or even be on the field, in some ways. And D. Winters may very well start, but Devondre Campbell, who the Niners brought in from Green Bay, could have used live action reps against another team yesterday against Tennessee, and he didn't play. It seems like unless the Niners have to play a starter, they are not playing starters. And D. Winters may very well be in the mix to start alongside Fred Warner, but more than likely, he is in the mix battling Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, Jalen Graham, possibly Curtis Robinson and Tatum Bethune for the number 3 linebacker spot. And a good showing by Tatum Bethune. He's the only player, and it's not like I scoured Twitter or Reddit or social media, because a lot of people had hyperbolic, over-the-top reactions to say about anybody that did anything good. Tatum Bethune leading the team in tackles. I didn't see anybody pounding the table for him to make the team. It's still a very much an uphill battle, and especially with someone like Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, whose contract is basically guaranteed. If they were to release him, they would be on the hook for close to $2 million. There's no savings to be had. So Flannigan-Fowles is going to make the team. Is he linebacker 4? Is he linebacker 5? And I still don't think the Niners are going to take more than 5 linebackers. But it's not like, well, you got to take, the young guy, Bethune. Flannigan-Fowles has been in the defense now for 3 years? 2 or 3 years. This is going to be either his 3rd or 4th year. That accounts for something, especially when there's consistency in the type of defense that the Niners want to run. Dominic Puny, I sung his praises briefly early on, and I know he's had a good camp. He's had good one-on-one reps against defensive linemen, and he's showed out pretty well when they're playing 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, whatever it may be. But people proclaiming him the starting right guard before the first quarter is out. Now, guys, this is, done for a couple reasons. 1, because people are morons. 2, because they can't contain their excitement while watching a game and just can't not post something. And if they post something that happens to be right, then they can point back to, see, I said Dominic Puny was going to be the starter during the week 1 game, preseason game against the Titans. If you post enough shit or enough stuff, I mean, it's not all shit, but post enough stuff, nonsensical stuff, eventually something is going to be right. I'm sure someone posted or tweeted the day that Trey Lance was drafted that he would get traded before his first contract was up with the 49ers. Now, an asinine thing to post, a stupid thing to say, but all for, hey, I could point back to that. And what are the repercussions, right? What are the repercussions of being an absolute moron, spouting generally nonsense on social media? There are none. So you could say you might as well just overwhelm people's Twitter feeds with stuff, because then you could take a screenshot of what you said and be like, see, I said that. Trust me, I'm not a moron, although you probably generally are. So I'll quote that the future of the 49ers defense is in good hands, and one of the players that was listed was Kalia Davis. Newsflash, Kalia Davis really might not make the roster. If Kalia Davis was the future of the Niners D, he wouldn't have played last night, moron. Now I'm looking forward to seeing what else Kalia Davis can do. But your defensive tackles are Hargrave, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, and Kevin Givens. You know why? Because all four didn't play last night. I'm sorry, Kevin Givens did play a little bit, but he also has basically a fully guaranteed salary of, I think it's close to $2 million. Yeah, $2 million on the button. He's not going anywhere. Now, the Niners could take a fifth defensive tackle because they're banged up at DN, so they may, if they only go with 9 D linemen, they may go 5 D tackles, 4 D ends. We're going to get more into that in a little bit. But everybody's got to slow their roll. You know, and I think it was D. Winters, Renardo Green, Kalia Davis, and it might have been, who was the last one? It might have been Tatum Bethune. I can't really recall. But again, this is preseason games, guys. First preseason game. Why are we getting so high? And unfortunately, what I'm actually seeing is nobody's getting too low. They lost. It's not like anybody performed super bad. I mean, the worst performance in a way came from Cody Schrader and Matt Breida. They combined for 11 rushes for 6 yards. Now, the Niners O-line wasn't doing any favors. Titans D-line might have either, won their assignments for those 11 rushes or, stacked the line, knew a run was coming, whatever it may be. But for, and I'm excited for both of these backs. I'm not pouring cold water on it, but the whole training camp hero mantra that I've been preaching for the past couple off seasons, Schrader looked good in practice when people generally aren't getting hit. 5 for 6 against the Titans, and yes, would have been maybe 6 for 16, which still isn't great if that holding penalty, wasn't called. So those were the only players that really underperformed. When you're averaging 1.2 yards a carry or 0 yards per carry, I would say that's an underperforming night. And lastly, I was scrolling. To me, it's a preseason game, right? I just wanted to see what was out there just on Twitter, maybe a little bit on Reddit during commercials, right? I'm watching the game on my laptop with wire-connected earbuds in, just so, my family, they're watching TV, that I could just kind of, concentrate. Again, just watching this on my laptop. Not the end of the world, but it's a way that I chose to spend 3 hours and enjoyed it because Niner football is back. But the number of people that were and do live tweet during a game. Listen, I'm not going to tell anybody how to live their lives or if what they enjoy is stupid, because there's a lot of things that I enjoy that people could be stupid. I still collect comic books. I still somewhat collect football cards, not nearly as much as I do comic books. Still play video games. I like Star Wars. I like Harry Potter. Hell, I have this podcast. Some people may look down upon that. But when you're, to me, and I'm not a boomer, I'm not a codger, I'm not anything other than just like, when you are such a fervent, diehard fan of a team, and you're watching them play preseason, regular season, postseason, why can't you put the phone down? Why are you engaging with other people? And some of them, it's not just tweeting something, right? It's then following up, responding, reading with what's read. So there is an engagement, a back and forth going on. Why can't you just watch the goddamn game? Now, I'm an introvert, maybe sometimes a little bit of a loner. I refuse to watch 49er playoff games with anybody but, my son, who's a Niner fan as well, because I don't want to don't bother me. If I want to yell, if I want to get a little crazy or pace around the room, I don't need anyone else around, and I don't want to entertain anybody. I'll watch and I've been watching regular season games with friends for the past 20 plus years, because I've always had NFL Sunday Ticket, either with DirecTV or YouTube TV. So yeah, come on over, let's watch a Niner game, or if you want to watch 7 hours worth of football, we'll bullshit, whatever. And that was generally before myself or any friends were having kids. That's fine. But when it's go time for a Niner game, a Monday night game, a big game like the game against the Chiefs this year, I'm watching it by myself. Like big games. generally don't want to be bothered. Now, I know maybe that puts me in the minority, but my God, people, not you people out there, but the people out there, and of course they're content creators, because it's all about volume and it's about posting content, not good content. You guys got to, some people just have to stop dry humping their phone. Stop dry humping Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. It's okay to put the phone down. It's okay to put the phone down. Now let's move to the latest in Brandon Aiyuk trade compensation stuff that you guys know, but just some things I have a couple thoughts on. So Aiyuk, still a Niner, and things are trending that he will possibly, I don't want to say probably, but possibly be a Niner for the long term. There were reports that he met with Kyle Shanahan face-to-face, have, additional candid conversations about things. And some trade compensation was reported. Now, whether true or not, right? Everybody has sources, respected journalists, beat writers, nobodies on Twitter, losers on Twitter, people who think they're somebody and they're a nobody on Twitter. Everybody has sources. In terms of the Cleveland Browns, it was reported that the Browns would have made a trade of Amari Cooper, a second-round pick, and a fifth-round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, and Aiyuk said no. It's obviously clear that Aiyuk wants to go to Pittsburgh. He's just probably not going to go to Pittsburgh. I really think the Niners are going to work something out. But I thought that was a bigger haul than I thought they would have gotten from Cleveland for someone like Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper's on the last year of his deal. You're going to run into the same issue with Amari Cooper as you are with Brandon Aiyuk. Now, the second-round pick and the fifth-round pick is nice. Plus, you're getting a receiver that can help you this year make a Super Bowl run, but he is 30, 4 years older than Aiyuk. He's going to want another contract. And unless you could say, unless you look at it, if you're the Niners, as, we got Amari Cooper for this year, 2024, to help us make a run. We'll let him walk next year in 2025. We'll take the second-round pick and fifth-round pick to improve our team, and we will more than likely get a third or fourth-round compensatory pick for him when he walks in free agency. I could sort of get behind that logic, but now you're assuming that Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing develop. You'll still have Juwan Jennings, and I don't know what to do with Deebo Samuel. He's going to be, 30 in 2 years. Physical. Do you want to give him a lucrative third contract? I don't. I think as much as Kyle Shanahan likes him as a chess piece, I think he's a chess piece that's going to be unreliable moving forward, given his age and the way he plays. But the Amari Cooper Browns trade, I thought was, I hesitate to use the word generous, but more than what I thought they would get for including, even though he's 30, a 1,000-yard receiver who had a very comparable year last year to Brandon Aiyuk. And then when you contrast that with the Steelers, and it's reported by, again, nobody's on Twitter, and I'm not sure if a respected journalist or media member tweeted this or posted this, but I'm seeing that the Steelers are offering a second and a third for Aiyuk. That will never, ever, ever be enough. Especially now if the Steelers know the Browns offered a Pro Bowl caliber receiver, a second and a fifth. That is the floor in terms of a trade as far as I'm concerned. And there were reports I saw, and again, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, guys, that the Niners were looking for 2 seconds, which I would never trade Aiyuk for 2 seconds. You still have to get a wide receiver back to help complement your team and offense to make a Super Bowl push this year. Anybody that says, the Niners would be fine without Brandon Aiyuk, no, that is a significant hit offensively. You don't lose an all-pro player, second-team all-pro player, and think your offense is going to perform to 90-95% of what it was, especially in the passing game. If this was year 2 of Ricky Pearsall, maybe. And if you saw enough glimpses in year 1 that you're comfortable making the trade, Maybe you do. That's why I think next year, if Pearsall shows enough this season, it would make the Debo trade much more palatable and obviously help them financially moving forward, because in my world, you would have one receiver signed to a big money contract, Aiyuk, Pearsall on a rookie deal at the end of the first round, which is basically the best you can get in the first, and Juwan Jennings will have a 2-year moderate type of contract, in addition to Cowing and whoever else they wind up picking up. And like I said, now reports are that there's a better than average chance that he's going to return to San Francisco. The Niners, during this exercise, could view the contracts offered and the compensation offered as information gathering, more so the contracts than the compensation. Now they know that if reports are true, the Patriots were going to offer an average of $32 million a year for Aiyuk. We don't know what the guaranteed money is, and that's literally the most important thing. But Aiyuk said no. And Gerard Mayo, the Patriots head coach, came out and said, not that there's no hard feelings. I don't even think he said anything about feelings. Just said, when we start winning, players will want to come here. Now, you can use logic and say, well, when you get winning players, then more winning players will want to come here. That's basically been the New York Knicks philosophy the past 15 years. They always thought that they were going to get someone in free agency when they were a dumpster fire. And when this star comes, like Amari Stoudemire, you got to be kidding me. When this star comes, and then this star comes, then other stars come, they'll want to be part of the Knicks and growing. You got to win first. You got to win first with your squad or with your team and some 1 or 2 players that are developing into stars, which the Knicks did, or were lucky enough to land a Jalen Brunson, trade for an OG Anunoby, still have Julius Randle, and bringing in some other pieces to complement. And if they get another piece, which I guess Mikal Bridges maybe is that piece, and didn't mean to turn the Niner podcast into anything, Knicks related, but he's right. You got to start winning before you can start really being an attractive destination. And the Northeast, New England, Boston, very cool town. But place like the Bills, like you better be good if you want to get, good free agents, because who the fuck wants to live in Buffalo or, Minnesota? Horrendous. So we'll see. Again, I still think Aiyuk returns. I think, you have his wide receiver coach, TJ Houshmandzadeh, or his personal coach, saying that he would play for $28 million a year. Again, I think TJ Houshmandzadeh's got to shut up, at least for Brandon Aiyuk's sake. Unless Aiyuk is telling him, TJ, go out there, drop this stuff, let them know what I want. Because if 28 gets the deal done, and to me, I'd make it 28-5. I kept saying it because it one-ups, it's a little bit more than Jalen Waddle, makes Aiyuk a top 5 receiver compensation-wise, even though a lot of us don't believe, and I'm okay with not believing, that he is not a top 5 receiver in this league. He isn't. And that's okay. That's not slighting him. He's a top 10 receiver. He's just not a top 5 receiver, but he's getting paid top 5 money. What it's ultimately going to come down to is guaranteed money. How much are the Niners willing to guarantee? And I don't know why you're really balking at this when this is an ascending player. He's your wide receiver 1. He's been pretty darn durable. And you don't want to be the team in the future that balks at giving market value contracts to your star players. You don't have to blow it out of the ballpark. And the Niners are doing right by not giving him over 30. There's no reason to. Not worth it, not necessary. But if they come to something reasonable in the 28s per year with fair, total guarantees, no reason why it shouldn't get done. And it will be on the Niners. It will be an organizational failure if they let him go or trade him for what would amount to be, $2 million more a year. That's the $2 million, in my mind, that they gave to McCaffrey per year unnecessarily. They gave McCaffrey an extra $3 million a year. Yeah, Offensive Player of the Year, that's great. But he was already top of the market. Why did the Niners voluntarily push the top of the running back market higher than they needed to? Didn't need to give him $3 million a year on average more. Could have been $1 million. Still a good amount of money. Didn't need to be that much. Now let's transition to the other holdout, I used to hold in, but the holdout, Trent Williams. Why is he getting a pass Why are nobody, what's the right tense? There's nobody talking about Trent Williams really, or nearly as much as Brandon Aiyuk. In terms of the conversation, it's 90-10 Aiyuk to Trent Williams. Why is he getting a pass? Very Hall of Fame left tackle. Still a top 2-3 tackle in the league. I think Pro Football Focus might have graded him out as the number 1 left tackle in the league. 36 years old. He has base salaries of $18, $22, and $32 million for the next 3 seasons, but no guaranteed money left. Okay, I think this is something we all know. Now, Trent Williams has the 4th, per his contract, which was signed, 2 or 3 years ago? He has the 4th highest average annual value among left tackles, the 5th highest among left tackles in total guaranteed money at $45.1 million, and the 5th most in fully guaranteed money at $40 million. In terms of that highest, the 4th highest average annual value, coming in at 4, the 3 above him are tackles Christian Darrisaw of the Vikings. He's 25 years old. Laramie Tunsil of the Texans, 30 years old. And Andrew Thomas of the Giants, 25 years old. There is no one over 32 years old at left tackle making more than $18.5 million annually. That doesn't mean Trent Williams shouldn't have a restructured contract. He's 36 years old. In terms of, I think, pass blocking and run blocking grades, there was some slight slippage this year when compared to last year. But still the most important piece of the line, the best lineman that they've had since Joe Staley. You can rework the contract, but you don't have to give him a raise. Now, I'm not an agent. I don't know if rework automatically means a raise, or you could just look at what he's getting and guarantee some of it. So it's $72 million worth of salaries for 24, 25, and 2026. I don't know how much, do you guarantee half of it? I'm throwing numbers out here. I don't know what would work or not work for the Niners cap in general, or how they can push restructure money. They could still add void years onto the back end. But he does not need to be paid annually more than these 3 players above him, even if he's a better tackle, because you have to take age into consideration. You have to take what if, even after a restructure, Trent Williams retires. Does that potentially screw the Niners cap? Or would Trent Williams do the Niners a solid and accept an additional restructure like Drew Brees did when he retired with the Saints, to be able to lessen the cap hits of the years that he's no longer on the team? Those are for sports lawyers, Parag Marath, John Lynch, and team to figure out. But they can guarantee him more money, but not necessarily need to give him more annually. So if they release him, instead of saving, $30 million on the cap in 2026, maybe they save $15 million on the cap or $20 million on the cap. Again, I'm just throwing numbers out there. I understand why Trent Williams is doing this. I think he needs to have, as a 36-year-old tackle, a realistic expectation of, because he'll get $18 million this year. If I believe if that's the number. Like, even if he were to get hurt, someone of his tenure and star power and level of play, even if he got hurt week 1 and was put on IR, he'd get all of his money. Then of course 2025, 2026, if it was a career-ending injury, would be in question. So I understand wanting this security. But, and I hate to say this, you've been paid a shit ton of money already. It's a different situation than Brandon Aiyuk, who has not been paid yet, and he's looking to get the bag in terms of a 3 or 4 year deal, and then get the bag again when he's 29 or 30 years old. And this is, I get it too, Trent Williams' last opportunity to get, quote unquote, the bag. But your bag, I think, is going to be a lot, or should be a decent amount smaller to significantly smaller than what you have envisioned in your head. We'll see. Now, some transactions. I didn't want to lead with this because it's not burying the lead, because it's kind of after the fact type stuff. But In this past 7 days, the Niners made a bunch of transactions. Just quickly talk about them. They signed wide receiver John Trey Kirkland and running back Keyshawn Vaughn, released safety Eric Harris, and wide receiver Tariq Owens. The Niners have, I think, upward of 10 or 12 receivers on their 90-man roster, and they brought a running back in just given the injuries to Isaac Orendo and Eli Mitchell. And of course, McCaffrey's not going to play, so you're 3 running backs down. You want to make sure other backs get some work. Interestingly enough, though, running back Patrick Taylor, acquired from the Green Bay Packers, did not register a carry yesterday against the Titans. I'm not sure if he was in there on special teams or whatnot, but they still brought Keyshawn Vaughn in, and they released Eric Harris. They made a corresponding safety move. They signed safety Tracy Walker last year with the Lions and placed defensive end Drake Jackson on the PUP list. He is done for the year. So Drake Jackson tore the patellar tendon of his knee. Much more intensive and extensive rehab than an ACL reconstruction, and he wasn't responding the way that the Niners thought he would. They announced 2 weeks ago that he wasn't going to practice in the preseason, and they saw enough in terms of where he's at that they just don't think he's going to be ready at all this season. Or, I mean, he could have been kept on the roster and not put on IR until after final cuts. But I guess the Niners really needed bodies or an extra body to be in here at defensive end for the preseason. They couldn't afford his roster spot to be taken up. So Drake Jackson done for the year. And correspondingly, they signed defensive end Jonathan Garvin, formerly of the Packers, and played in the UFL. Punter Presley Harvin, because Mitch Wishnowsky had knee irritation. And they put another defensive end, Austin Bryant, on IR. He is done, or he may get released with an injury settlement. And released Logan Thomas, surprising. Now, he's been a bit banged up. I think he might have had a little bit of a knee issue, was not participating all that much in training camp. Perhaps when he was, being 32, a little bit older than Kittle, bigger tight end, maybe not as strong of a blocker, an inline point of attack blocker that Kyle Shanahan probably requires. So he's released. Now he's going to be floating out there. I don't think he's going to be snatched up in the next couple of weeks. If the Niners have an injury at tight end or more than one injury going into final cuts, I can see them bringing Logan Thomas back because, again, just receiving-wise, the best receiving tight end threat they've had ever behind George Kittle. Surprising that he was gone, but again, it could be a situation where they needed the roster spot, that the injury, if it wasn't responding the way that they thought. But a surprise cut, as that was someone that I was fairly certain would make the team and thought he had a really good chance of being tight end too. And as far as, defensive end Austin Bryant, I thought he had an outside chance of being DN number 5 should they carry 5. Or at the worst, make the practice squad. Both of their stories are not fully written yet in terms of being a 49er, unless Austin Bryant's IR becomes season-ending IR, and I still think it'll be an injury settlement, and he'll be back in the free agent pool in the coming days. And that concludes the 49ers section of the podcast. Stick around. We're going to be talking Star Wars upcoming projects, including teaser trailers and videos for the Manalorian and Grogu movie, the Skeleton Crew show, and Andor Season 2. Stay with us.
It's plus time.
So Disney recently had its, I don't know if it's annual, but D23 conference where they give updates on projects, whether it's, Pixar, Disney proper, Star Wars, Marvel. The Marvel stuff actually came out at San Diego Comic-Con, announcing the 2 new Avengers movies, Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret War. But here, Disney and Lucasfilm gave updates regarding 3 upcoming Star Wars properties. The first being the Manalorian and Grogu movie. They actually had about a minute teaser trailer put together in which we see, obviously, Mando and Grogu on another adventure, picking up at the end of season 3, which really tied together this, or completed the story arcs, at least from the show, of Grogu, the Mandalorian bringing Grogu to Luke, attempting for him to attempt to be a Jedi, and Grogu wanting to stay with the Mandalorian, and Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, helping Bo-Katan essentially reclaim Mandalore, and then Mando and Grogu basically retiring on a farm on a backwater planet. But in the trailer, you hear the Mandalorian kind of up front saying, I'm his protector now, and I'm going to be much more careful in terms of the jobs that I choose. So he's obviously on some sort of mission, if it's regardless of who it's for, the New Republic, because remember, this is set between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. But what we did see was the blue alien character Zeb from Rebels was live action here in the cockpit of another Razor Crest looking ship, and Razor Crest being kind of the brand of the ship. So Din Djarin is getting back, the type of ship that he's historically accustomed to flying. We see action happening on a snow planet. We see snow troopers like we saw invading the rebel base on the planet of Hoth. We see the gigantic AT-AT walkers attacking the Mandalorian and Grogu in kind of like an individual robotic walking thing. As they're sliding down a mountain, they slide right into the path of AT-ATs who are firing at them. There wasn't a ton of footage. Again, it was only a minute. It concluded with the title screen, and then it went back to a scene with Grogu and two of the small... it was so quick, and the footage wasn't totally kind of in focus. It looked like they were the two Babu Frick creatures, those two small alien mechanical creatures from Rise of Skywalker. Episode 9, it might have been a different species altogether, but it kind of ended on that. And, the end title had May 2026 as the release date for The Mandalorian and Grogu in theaters. Now, the dates that Lucasfilm and Disney had given basically a year ago or more when they announced this movie, the Rey movie, and the Dawn of the Jedi movie, the dates that they gave were May 2026, December 2026, and December 2027. Now, what we learned at San Diego Comic-Con is that Avengers Doomsday is coming out May 2026. This Star Wars movie, it was announced on the screen coming out as May 2026. Something is going to have to move. They are not putting a Marvel movie up against a Star Wars movie in the same month, and a Pixar Toy Story 5 coming out, whether it's end of April or early June, in the same ballpark as well. They're going to be in even if it's even a small way, cannibalizing ticket sales. Something's got to move. Now, if it's Star Wars or even Avengers Doomsday, you can't push it back 6 months to December of 2025. One, who knows if the effects are going to be done, and I don't know if Doomsday didn't start any principal photography yet. Mando and Grogu obviously has, but you can't push it back to December 2025 because that's when Avatar 3 is releasing. And I don't, that's still a year and 4 months out, but I haven't heard anything about that movie really at all. If it's on track, I know they filmed a good amount of it when they filmed Avatar 2. So that leaves, do you push Star Wars or Avengers back to July? Like mid or end of July? Like you're going to have to do something. Do you push it back to December 2026? You have that date already. Which, I don't think in any way the Rey movie, which is officially or unofficially Star Wars Episode 10, would be ready for December 2026. Maybe the Rey movie gets pushed to December 2027, and the Dawn of the Jedi movie is sometime in 2028. Which is still amazing how Star Wars can't get its shit together for either of those last two movies I mentioned, the Rey movie or Dawn of the Jedi, when it was announced a year and a half ago, yet they just announced Avengers Doomsday and are telling us it's coming out in, well, I guess essentially 2 years, or a little under 2 years. Sorry, I was getting the dates confused as I'm looking at my notes. Now, in terms of the Mandalorian series, because I just went back and said, well, is the time frame a little off in terms of how long it's taking between season 3 and this movie? So season 1 released in 2019. It was November 12th to December 27th. Season 2 released in 2020 from October 30th to December 18th. So you had essentially slightly less than a year in between the debuts of each season. Then in 2023, season 3 didn't launch until 2023, March 1st to April 19th. So you went from December 18th of 2020 to March of 2023, which is 2 years and 3 months in between season 2 and season 3. And with Mandalorian season 3 ending on April 19th, 2023, if it does release in May of 2026, that'll be 3 years apart between the final season and the movie, which still kind of blows my mind. I know things are more cinematic and you have to have big set pieces and probably spend more on special effects, but you essentially got 4.5 to 5 hours worth of content in a season done in a year or 2 years, and it's going to take you another year longer to get half as much film, a 2 hour and 15-minute movie done. But those are just the timelines, I guess, for TV, for movies. So that was cool to see. I'm not sure if it was leaked video footage. It was someone on their smartphone recording it. Disney, generally, I don't know why they do this. They just release stuff for people at conventions. They don't release trailers to the public. Now, as I'm recording this, maybe it's out there. Hopefully it is. Check it out. In addition to the next one, Skeleton Crew, a show that will be releasing on Disney Plus December 2024. This is essentially a Goonies-type kid adventure that takes place in space. The teaser trailer, a little bit longer than that for The Manalorian and Grogu, focuses on a group of kids who are not Padawans, find something in a nearby forest of their home planet. You hear one of them say, I think it's a lost Jedi temple, and it winds up essentially being a spaceship that I'm assuming takes off from their planet and they may not have really much control over, and then they have an adventure in space and they meet Jude Law's character. You see that at the end of the trailer, who may or may not be a Jedi. Too early to tell, unless there are some very reputable leaks out there that know who Jude Law is playing. It looked fun. Already, the miserable Star Wars fans are complaining about, wow, there are suburbs. There are suburbs in the Star Wars galaxy with homes and front lawns and sidewalks and a big issue with the miserable Star Wars fans. And there are certain forums or subreddits on Reddit that are specifically made for people to bitch about Star Wars, which, one, is ridiculous. Two, I guess it's okay because you're self-containing the toxicity to, this dumpster fire of a subreddit, but complaining that in the vast myriad of planets out there in the Star Wars universe, that there wouldn't be at least one or a country on one planet where people live in a similar way to how we live on Earth. Not every planet has to be Coruscant. Not every planet has to be Tatooine or Jakku, where you're basically farming for moisture on a desert planet. Okay, you have Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back. You have a desolate ice planet in Empire Strikes Back on Hoth, where it was really a necessity that the rebels had to hide there so the Empire wouldn't find them. You have a forest planet full of somewhat intelligent life in Ewoks. Why could there not be? And you have what Andor showed you in terms of, outskirts settlements that kind of feel like Old West type of towns. But that doesn't mean there can't be a planet where folks are living like civilized human beings, like we are on Earth. The Skeleton Crew show, I don't know if it's meant to ultimately tie into the larger thematic story of what The Mandalorian is doing, Ahsoka, anything that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are doing with that, Rebels, with that time frame. Actually, not Rebels. That Rebels takes place before A New Hope, but that time frame between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. I don't recall if I've seen an actual timeline for when Skeleton Crew takes place, but it would be a shame if it did not. It would be a shame if it was a one-off type of show. Now, The Acolyte may be a one-off type show that takes place before The Phantom Menace, and there was no announcement made at D23 regarding a season 2, and Heedland, the showrunner and creator of The Acolyte, has said she hasn't heard anything yet. Ahsoka didn't get renewed until a few months after the season finale, so there is time, and I'm hoping that show gets picked up. There's nothing wrong with standalone shows or series in a different time period, but I am a fan of interconnectivity, and if The Acolyte continues with a season 2 and season 3, and it steamrolls closer towards The Phantom Menace, that's where you get, and you've seen, the Darth Plagueis appearance. And would that potentially lead to his apprenticing of Sheev Palpatine? So at least it's kind of connecting. There's a red thread between the show and the episodic movies. It doesn't have to be that. And if Skeleton Key is just a one-off, one-season fun show, I'm looking forward to it. This is another show that feels like it's going to capture the original spirit of Star Wars. It has children starring in it, so if people are out there saying, yeah, well, Star Wars should be goofy and campy because it's for kids, well, then you have a show that's probably going to be campy, that stars kids, that may draw younger viewers in, but it's going to draw the overall, 50s-ish down to 10 years old wide demographic of everybody that's, seen or likes Star Wars. And of course, the miserable pieces of shit that live to complain about Star Wars will continue to hate watch this just to review bomb it later. And I wonder if they would take as much of a smack at this show as they did The Acolyte, because, and I hate to say this, but people are sexist, racist assholes, because Leslie Headland created it, and she's a female, and she's also gay, and the lead of the show is a female, and there were two lead females, in addition to Carrie Ann Moss being, a female Jedi Master. Too many people out there have the mentality, it's not even old school mentality, it's a shitty mentality of Star Wars is for boys, no girls allowed. I wonder if these assholes would take that many shots at this show that are starring kids. But we are 4 months away from it. The production value looked really good. If any of these teasers are available, and let's quickly talk about Andor. The Andor teaser gave some slight footage, minimal footage from season 2, but really there was more character and actor interviews and sound bites about how this season everything is grander in scope and bigger. Good to see. Not that we thought Lucasfilm or Disney forgot about Andor, but you can see that's obviously not as far along as Skeleton Key is. It was just given a date of 2025 in terms of the release. Andor, far and away the most adult of Star Wars shows. Something like an Ahsoka, an Acolyte falling I think in the middle, in addition to an Obi-Wan, Book of Boba Fett I wasn't really thrilled with, but again, still watched it. Didn't have to hate post or shit post anything about it. Very excited for Andor Season 2. Pretty darn excited about Mandalorian and Grogu. Granted, that's two years out. And Skeleton Crew I'm pretty excited for as well, and that is closest in terms of when we're going to see it 4 months away. But that concludes the 49ers Plus podcast for today. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule for making us part of your listening routine. This today was totally in my wheelhouse in terms of Star Wars and 49er talk, and I guess a little bit of Knicks talk as well. So I hope you enjoyed the content. The 49ers next play at home on Sunday, I believe, against the Saints. There may or may not be another podcast between now and then. It's really silly to preview a preseason game where it's really just about playing new players and young players to get them experience and keep your starters and stars healthy. But if I do have time and if there is noteworthy stuff, especially if Aiyuk or Trent Williams resign, there may be a podcast between now and Sunday. Otherwise, there will definitely be a podcast talking about what we saw in the second preseason game against the Saints and then catching up on any news and notes from this upcoming week. But like always, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay safe, and we will talk soon. Take care.